have my one joke. This is on, isn't it? Hi, everyone. This is on. Hey, thank you all for coming tonight to our town hall. And Eva's here. Okay. This is my 5th annual, and I really appreciate your joining us. I really appreciate the agency's representatives all coming tonight. And I'm going to let you know who each of these people are when their turn comes to answer a question. But I want to start by thanking our hosts here at the Marlene Meyerson JCC in Manhattan, and especially Eve Landau, the director of JCC's Joseph Stern Center for Social Responsibility, Matt Temkin, JCC's audio engineer and digital media specialist, and really the entire JCC staff who have been so amazing. So if we give them a round of applause, and Eve, could you come up?
Thank you, and on behalf of the Joseph Stern Center for Social Responsibility and the Marlene Meyerson JCC, I want to welcome all of you tonight. The Stern Center engages participants within and outside our walls to become more effective civic actors through education, engagement, and advocacy. We collaborate with Jewish social justice and civic partners in order to expand our perspectives and impact. And with that mission in mind, it's really a delight to have Councilmember Rosenthal's town hall, to be hosting this town hall tonight. If you want more information about the JCC, pick up a program guide on your way out at the front of the box office, or go to jccmanhattan.org. And welcome to all of you and to the agency representatives, and I'm giving it back to Helen.
Great, thank you. I hope each of you picked up one of these booklets. Does everyone have one? Okay. Inside you'll find the program for tonight, all the contact information for our agency representatives, and I know I'm a little early on this, but Sarah, can you just raise your hand? Sarah Crean and my staff and Ned Terrace, who's back there, took in about 150 questions from the community. So thank you all for asking your questions. And the ones that we found we often get in our office, we wrote up the questions and the answers. So if you could, look through the book before the second part of this town hall, just to make sure that the answer to your question isn't already in the booklet. Okay, we also have a tremendous number of flyers. There was a second table when you walked in. So if you didn't see the flyers when you walk in, we have a lot of exciting events coming up, including a bike helmet giveaway. Thank you, DOT. And you can always go to my website, helenrosenthal.com, to get more information. So I'm very excited about the technology that's in this room today. I'm proud to say that our town hall is accessible for those with mobility issues and hearing loss. We're very lucky to have CART, which is real-time transcribing. Lauren Schechter is here from Total Caption, and the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities funds this program, so if we could give her a round of applause. She's amazing. And if anyone would prefer a different type of listening advice, raise your hand and someone from the JCC will come around. Okay. Every New Yorker now should be able to access public meetings, and when they come into those public meetings, be able to hear what's going on or understand what's happening at the meeting. And that's because 2 years ago, the mayor signed into law 3 bills that I sponsored, one of which requires that the flyer for every event, and you may have noticed this, I don't have it here because we're here, but the flyer on all my events will indicate whether or not the location is wheelchair accessible, whether or not there are hearing devices, and I'm excited that he passed the law and now funds this CART program. You may notice that every once in a while I slow down. It's because I've worked with Lauren quite a few times, and she has trained me not to talk as fast as I usually do. So I have the great pleasure of introducing someone who is my colleague in government. I'm so lucky that he is in service at the same time I am, Assemblymember Danny O'Donnell.
I will work on speaking slower as well.
No.
Thank you to Helen and for the wonderful staff that she has. She's an absolute treasure to have as a colleague in government. We do different kinds of jobs. I go to Albany and pass laws and pass budgets. And I just came back from Albany this morning, so it gets kind of tired. I had some budget victories that don't get written about in the New York Times. And one of them was a proposal to raise the floor area ratio through the entire city to 12. Now, any of you who have been involved in a zoning battle knows what that means. There are sections of our city, sections of our neighborhood, where the FAR is significantly lower than 12, and they tried to sneak that into the budget. Not with me. So I found out about it, and I read it, and I got something like 50 colleagues of my in the assembly to write a letter to the speaker and say, no way, Jose, not here, not now, not anytime, because the current process with FARs gives you a voice when those changes are proposed. We will not take away, as long as I'm around, your power to be heard. And that should make the community board chair, Ms. Seymour, very happy, I presume. I am now the chair of the Arts and Tourism Committee. So what is the path in Albany? It's a seniority-driven system. In the beginning, I was the chair of the Ethics Committee. That was no fun. Then I was chair of the Corrections Committee, which was more fun than ethics, but it involved prisons. And in that capacity, I went to 38 state prisons over the course of 3 years. They're all far away from here, so I drove all over humanity and toured the prisons. And it's a $3 billion annual budget, the prisons. And so I had some victories there. So now I'm the arts chair. And that is a lot more pleasant. I tell people I get to go to the Tony Awards and not sing, and that's a good thing from my perspective. So this year, we, for the first time in a decade, raised the budget of the New York State Council on the Arts. The first time in a decade to $42 million. And last year, we put in capital money. So that's to build things like windows and this beautiful room. So somehow we put in $10 million. The governor wanted it in, so he put in $10 million. And then there was $20 million. But they decided that the $20 million could only go to organizations who had $500,000 of capital needs. I don't know where they got that from. And that they had to have 50% of the money up from outside sources. Well, you know what that does? That eliminates all the small functioning arts organizations from getting access to the money. So this year, we said we're not going to do it that way. We put in $10 million, the governor matched nothing, none of that. But $5 million is being given out through NISCA. And the most important part of that is NISCA has the power to waive the matching money requirement. So if you're a small organization that doesn't have the ability to get matching money, you can still access that money. And that money goes a very long way. People always ask me, how do you come up with bill ideas? And it comes out in strange ways. So we're going to have the first example is the Mrs. Cohen example. Mrs. Cohen's a real-life person and my constituent. Her son is Dan Cohen, the state committee man. She is a rent-controlled tenant who makes just a little bit more money than she's eligible for SCREE. Just this much. So she came to me and said, isn't there some way to adjust this? So I put in a bill that would exempt Social Security from the SCREE calculation. So the people who are just on the cusp would be able to get that. She's adorable, but tenacious, a West Sider. And so every time I see her son, he says to me, where's my mother's bill? So I'm hoping that this session, in the next 6 weeks, we pass Mrs. Cohen's bill. The next bill came about because a staffer suggested it. So we have an opioid crisis here, okay? And so for those of you who don't know this, I was a public defender in the 80s and 90s in Brooklyn during the crack years. So I represented thousands of people who were addicts, and many of whom were heroin addicts. And the treatment for heroin is to give them another opioid, to replace heroin with methadone. So one of my staffers one day driving to Albany said to me, well, why don't we let them use medical marijuana for opioid addiction? So I don't know, let's look into it. And it turns out it's extraordinarily effective. In places where they have utilized this 25% reduction in deaths from overdoses. So I have a bill that we put in that has become a huge success. It has bipartisan support. I've been invited to speak all over the country about trying to change the way we look at this opioid crisis and come up with other solutions other than the ones we have already. I also would like to increase access to naloxone. I can never say the crazy. So I have 3 bills, one to require it to be in libraries, one to be required in colleges, one that it's required in schools. My staff took the training on how to administer it. If someone's going into overdose and they're given that, they live. So we have that tool that we didn't have in the 80s and 90s. We should make sure that there's more access to that. And finally, I've become a disability advocate because I had a wonderful meeting with the city's disabled commissioner, and he's a charmer. He's a charmer. So he convinced me to put $500,000 to make the Great Hall bathroom in Central Park fully ADA compliant. So we've done that. And I've also put in a bill to make sure that the disability laws are included and delineated in the driver's test. Okay, so we allow people to drive, and they often don't know some of the rules that they're required. And lastly, vacant storefronts. So we've lived through the drugstorization of the West Side and the vacancy decontrolling of the West Side, and it has changed the fabric of our life. I think it was Isaac Singer who used to say the Upper West Side of Manhattan is the only part of America that's European. Okay, that people come home at the end of the day, they go to a store and buy what they're going to cook, and then they go home and cook it. That's the way we live our lives. And so the reduction of these storefronts is not just bad for the landlord, the owners who have these stores, it's bad for all of us. So I have a bill that would require landlords to post broker and property management information after 1 month of vacancy. Now, why is that important? Well, maybe you know somebody who wants that storefront, but you can't find out who controls it. Or what happens if there's a blizzard and you can't walk down the street because they're not cleaning the street because you don't know who to call. So that bill requires that. I also have a Small Business Survival Act, which I'm working very closely with Public Advocate Tish James on small business outreach. The Survival Act requires 10-year leases unless the tenant refuses, and requires a 180-day notice before termination of a lease, and requires mediation of the lease if the tenant elects. This would empower people who are currently the fabric of our community to be able to stay here longer, be more effective. Those are the things I'll be working on from now until the end of June when session ends. Like I said in the beginning, I'm extraordinarily proud to be Helen's colleague, and thank you very much.
Great. It's so interesting that well, there's so many things that you're working on. I really appreciate all your work. We're probably going to get to some of the issues involved in passing those bills later on, but I really appreciate your talking about it. I also want to thank, we have representatives of the Public Advocate's Office and Senator Jose Serrano's office. Do you want to stand to be recognized if you're here? Oh, there you go. All right. Thank you very much. And I really I'm saving one of the best thank yous for last, which is to Eddie Friedman, who was my intern a couple of years ago. And he actually was the genius behind the legislation that brought us CART that's here tonight. So he's here. He's actually now, he worked his way into a job in city government. I'm so proud of him. He's here tonight, and I want to thank him. Thank you. So many of you are here to learn the results of participatory budgeting. And as you know, the projects are funded using $1 million of our district's $5 million allocation. And I'm just checking, how many people here voted in participatory budgeting? Wait, hang on, keep your hands up. Fascinating. So more than last year. Oh, Roberta, thank you. Thank you. More than last year, so this is good. This is very good. Not quite 100% yet. So for those of you who didn't vote, and don't know what participatory budgeting is, you're in for a treat. This year's project competition was our most successful to date. 3,583 residents voted for their favorite community initiatives, about 500 more than last year. And none of this would have been possible without the dedication and the hard work of our PB volunteers who made this happen by doing every single step of the process, from developing project ideas to staffing the voting sites. And you can look in your booklet for the names of our community volunteers, your neighbors who helped us out. But I especially want to recognize and thank Nate Epstein. If you could come on up here. Nate is currently working on a master's degree at John Jay College. He led our PB effort this year. We owe him a huge debt of gratitude, and he's going to take it from here on participatory budgeting. It was his thing.
Thank you so much, Helen. Wow, this thing's loud. So for the last 9 months, I've been working on participatory budgeting. And I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of interesting and quirky and most of all really caring people. So I just wanted to thank Helen and the rest of the staff, but most of all our volunteers who really had nothing to gain out of this except for a sense of community and just doing something good for the community. So thank you all very much. Without further ado, I'd like to announce the winners of this year's participatory budgeting. We had 4 this year. The first one, with the most votes, was technology upgrades at 3 Upper West Side libraries. Okay. Yeah. The second was the PS 166 technology upgrades. Third, we had tree guards and neighborhood beautification throughout the neighborhood. And finally, window replacement at Engine Company 74 Firehouse. Okay. And yeah, that's all. Thank you all very much.
Really good job. Did a much, yeah, it's down here. All right. So tonight is really for you, and I want you to hear firsthand from those in government who are responsible for making the city work for all of us. We're going to cover questions that were submitted online in advance first, and after that, we'll have an open mic Q&A. I have staff around the room. They're wearing IDs, and they have clipboards, and one is raising their hand. But they're generally down here if you need them. Oh, is there someone upstairs as well? I think, yeah. So if you need anything, raise your hand. If there's something that you have that's a personal issue that you have with an agency, you can talk to my staff after, or if you have to leave, whenever, and let them know, and we'll follow up with you. We'll have the agency, or we will follow up with you on your personal matter. For those of you who had been coming to my town halls for the last 4 years, every year we have heard about some quality of life issues that I just want to address right away. The issues have been about the M86 bus, mosquitoes on 84th Street, and the rats in the parks. So I'm very pleased to report that in the beginning of my second term, that our efforts have really paid off. We've significantly improved the M86 bus route. The amount of time it takes for its route is now 20% less long, which is great. And if you look at the new bus plan that the MTA has put out, it has features that are reminiscent of what SBS has done. So I think we'll have faster bus routes. That's the goal. We are cautiously optimistic that we've addressed the mosquito issue on West 84th Street. We now have DEP doing a lot of work. If anyone's interested in the details about it, happy to tell you. But I really want to actually give a round of applause to the representatives from DEP and DOH who, just raise your hands, who have been unstoppable. Oh, they're right next to each other. They have kept at this problem. We tried out probably 5 different theories, 3 of which were extremely expensive. And on behalf of the neighbors, especially the children who had been bitten up and, were allergic to the mosquitoes and having terrible outcomes, you guys stuck with it, and I think we're done, but we shall see, right? And then together with the mayor's office, we have directed significant funding for enclosed trash containers that will go in every playground in Riverside Park. They're already there, but hopefully that will mean that people won't inadvertently be feeding them, and instead they'll put their waste in these enclosed containers, so we can not attract rats. We work very closely with the city agencies to tackle these issues, and we really appreciate their commitment. So let's get started. This is for DOB and SBS. And hang on one second. We have Byron Munoz from DOB, and hang on. From SBS, we have someone who I adore, whose name is not on here, but I adore him. Where? Oh, it's handwritten. Aw. It's Warren Gardner, who's been here before, who we really adore. So there's a huge issue, obviously, with the vacant storefronts in our district and across the city. What are you guys working on in order to help that situation? And do we have a microphone for these guys?
Hi, good evening all. My name is Byron Munoz with Community Affairs at the Department of Buildings. Thank you, Councilmember Rosenthal, for inviting us this evening, and thank you all for attending. With regard to the sidewalk sheds, we understand one of the main concerns is how long they stay up. And the issue with that is that Many sidewalk sheds cannot come down until there is a engineer's report that says that it is safe to remove that sidewalk shed. Often, the sidewalk shed may be protecting the public from possible falling debris, from faulty facades, or from repairs that are required in those buildings. Issues that are likely present in your experience is perhaps sidewalk sheds whose permits have expired. That's one. Two is perhaps there is no illumination beneath them. They're not maintained properly, or they may attract behavior that is not desirable. The last of those is something that we coordinate with our colleagues at NYPD and or other agencies, depending on the type of behavior. And with regard to the maintenance of them, we inspect them for lighting, good maintenance, and if they have no permits, we definitely document that situation via a notice of violation. To get them removed, again, we need an engineer's report, and or we could also inspect the sidewalk shed, especially in cases when residents have observed that the work has completed, that has been completed, but the sidewalk shed remains.
And I'll just say a couple of residents have come to our office to report that the work's completed and they don't understand why the shed hasn't come down. We can call Byron and let him know so the engineer gets out there a lot faster. So if you know someone in that situation, feel free to call our office. Warren.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Warren Gardner. I'm the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs at the Department of Small Business Services. And thank you, Council Member, for hosting this and inviting us, and for handwriting my name on the.
You're special.
Thank you. Are you asking specifically for the sidewalk shed?
No, I mean from
concern?
SBS, are you guys considering a vacancy tax? Are you looking at commercial rent regulation? What kinds of tools does SBS have to keep the storefronts filled?
Well, the mayor has shown support for a vacancy tax. We think it'll potentially be a helpful tool. Obviously with most tax related issues, you need state authority, so we want to work closely with the state on how we can implement something like that. More broadly at SBS, we really try to work with commercial tenants to get them into long-term leases. We found that obviously the rent being the primary issue that we hear about, and we found that the majority of commercial tenants either don't have leases at all, or they have, they'll just work with their landlords and pay them on a monthly basis or whatever agreement they have, or they'll have month-to-month leases, which can obviously change. If you're paying one rate in April, your landlord can decide to charge you a new rent in May. So we really work with commercial tenants to understand the importance of signing longer-term leases, but also to understand what it is that they're signing. So we work with pro bono attorneys who will look at commercial tenants' leases to make sure that they're signing something that's fair for them and not taking on any additional responsibilities that they will eventually incur costs for.
And you've been a great partner to our office. We've held a couple of small business clinics where the business owners would know they could come and work with a lawyer. But I would encourage you, you're in the community. If there's a small business you know of that's having troubles, have them reach out to us, or more importantly, we'll put you in touch with Small Business Services. They have a range of tools that they can use to try to help that business stay. All right, secondly, for the MTA Accessoride, applying for the Accessoride requires an in-person assessment. Oh, wait, hang on. And we're wondering if there's another way that could happen, because they often, it's difficult to come in for the in-person assessment. And we have Kate Contino here from the MTA.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Council Member. It is required by law that the assessment be done in person with a healthcare professional. So unfortunately, we cannot do those interviews over the phone. However, once you've applied for Access-a-Ride, you'll get a letter back from us within approximately 5 days that goes through all of the details of your appointment. And that will also include free transportation in both directions.
And so where's the office in Manhattan?
Oh, my.
Wall Street?
Well,
Experts.
We have a service center at 2 Stone Street where folks can go in and get information about Access-a-Ride, reduced fare Metro cards, and the like.
Can they enroll there, apply?
I believe they can apply there, but the assessments are done in, I believe, at our Livingston location in Brooklyn.
And only there? For the assessments? You know what? I see we don't have complete information quite yet. So we will post the answer to this question on our website for those who are interested. I see a lot of hands going up, and so obviously there might be newer information. Or Luke, do you want to?
We'll give you the locations for the assessments.
Okay, they'll give us the locations for the assessments, and we will post those on our website. Okay, the next question is about tall buildings. What's going on with all the out-of-context buildings in this district? And I want you to know that our staff is working very hard. We've been working very hard with the local community, with the land use staff at the City Council to close loopholes that developers always seem to find. One example is at 50 West 66th Street, where Extel is proposing a building that's 775 feet tall. They currently have a building permit for a 250 foot tall building, but they sort of did a bait and switch. Once they had that work permit and started doing the work, they then purchased the property behind them and now are proposing to build this 775-foot building. Now, the mayor has committed to closing some loopholes that allows them to build so high, and we're pushing him very hard to close those loopholes quickly. At 200 Amsterdam, for those of you who came to my forum a month or so ago about what's happening with the update, it's now at the BSA under a challenge. We're supporting that challenge. In that situation, too, the developer had basically gerrymandered a lot. And interestingly enough, and Byron, I don't know if you're aware of this, but after we challenged this building, the DOB went back, looked at it again, but did issue a building permit to begin work, to begin the excavation. And then a month or two later decided that the loophole that the developer, it turns out, had sort of invented, it wasn't even like a loophole that you can work around. He literally came up with a loophole, which is amazing. But DOB decided it was not permissible. But they won't go back and take back the building permit. So we're in a challenge period now. I know I've simplified the issues. I'm sure it's more complex, and DOB has additional things they'd like to say about it. But we're fighting very hard, and our partner is the Community on Environmentally Sound Development, and they've been a wonderful partner hiring planners and tax lawyers to help us challenge these very tall buildings. And I just, want to end by saying there that I view this as Midtown creep. I thought tall buildings ended at 57th. And then I thought they ended at 59th, and I don't like them creeping up. And the mayor's well aware of my position on this. We don't think there are many more soft sites where they could have very tall buildings like this. But really, these lawyers are clever, and they come up with these things for the developers so they can build tall buildings. And the technology has changed so that they technologically can build very tall buildings now. It's very upsetting to all of us, I know. And we will continue to try to close the loopholes and stop these out-of-context developments. Next is for DOM for 3 agencies, Department of Health, NYCHA, and Department of Sanitation. So we have Caroline Bragdon from the Department of Health, and we have, is Brian Honan here? Great, from NYCHA, and someone new who we can ask questions to from the Department of Sanitation, Nick Chircaro. Did I say that right? You did. Okay. So if you guys could take a stab at what we do about the rat issues, the garbage that's around, it's exacerbated on NYCHA properties because the pickup timing is different, and yeah.
So I'll touch a little bit on sanitation's role. We do work often with our field personnel and NYCHA management to make sure that they are setting things out properly, that they are keeping their areas clean. Sometimes they have staging areas. A lot of the properties have different setups. Some of them have compactors that get picked up weekly. If they are close to capacity or at capacity, they can call for extra service, and we will come the next day to pick it up if they call before 8 o'clock the night before, I believe. Other areas don't have compactors. We are not responsible for how they manage the waste on their property. We are the service providers. So if an area doesn't have the correct size containers, or maybe there's a lot of buildings and they only have a few containers, there's really nothing we can do. We can advise them that they should purchase larger containers for their facility, but we can't require them based on the size to have X amount of containers for their facility. But we do work with them a lot. We have meetings monthly at 1PP that focus around a lot of crime and NYPD related issues, but we have every agency there. We have the mayor's office there. We go over everything from job programs for youth, for trying to build up senior centers on some sites where they closed, to garbage and sanitation related issues. We're always doing outreach to a lot of sites, doing walkthroughs, addressing some of the dropout conditions along the property. But we do work with NYCHA, and NYCHA does assume the majority of the role for maintaining the garbage on the property.
All right, if at the next meeting at One Police Plaza, could you talk about the fact that this was brought up on the Upper West Side, and there are specific locations, many of which are NYCHA related, and we would appreciate better coordination. Carolyn?
Hi. So I'm Caroline Bragdon. I'm the Director of Neighborhood Interventions for Pest Control at the Health Department. And we also work closely with NYCHA and Sanitation to come up with solutions to problems around garbage management and rat activity. There are many different NYCHA developments on the west side between 90th and 94th and 100th. All of them have kind of unique problems. Douglas related to size. They have compactors, but over the years we've tried really hard to work with residents and staff to make sure garbage is managed properly, that set out locations are not too widespread, and that garbage gets into a compactor and the compactors get serviced regularly. Those are the key steps that will reduce rat activity and also improve conditions for residents and neighbors. Along the brownstones, it's really a different problem. Because those buildings don't have compactors, they really need to manage their garbage on a day-to-day basis and have sufficient containers in front of the buildings to hold all of the waste that's coming out of those buildings in between pickups. And I think that's been a real struggle, is providing those sufficient containers given the limited amount of space that's there on the sidewalks to hold that garbage. So I think it's a work in progress, and I can turn it over to NYCHA to talk about that. The only other thing I want to say is that when you call 311 to complain about rat activity or garbage, those complaints do come to the health department. We do always deploy an inspector. I did check to see, have we been there recently to respond to those complaints, and the answer is yes, we have. We post all of our inspection results to the rat information portal at nyc.gov/rats. When we find conditions, we send an inspection report directly to the agency that owns the property. So we do keep communication open, and that information is also available to all of you.
I hope someone's tweeting out that there is a rat portal, something we all just learned in NY1. It's great.
Brian Honan from NYCHA, and first I'd like to thank the Department of Health and Sanitation for being tremendous partners, on this. This is a challenge for NYCHA. This district may not have the most NYCHA, but it has maybe like the most unique NYCHA. You have big campuses like Amsterdam houses, and then you have more traditional apartment buildings like the Brownstones on 90-something Street. So each of the developments has a different strategy. The good news is right now, all of the compactors that we have in developments in this district are currently working. I know like at the Hostess, for instance, that has been a constant challenge, and the council member and myself actually literally have gone to see the way the compactor works. Right now it's working. So that really helps us. But this is a real community effort. Just like the agencies working together, on our part, NYCHA staff needs to do what they do. They need to move the garbage, make sure that it's put in place properly. But we also need residents also to buy in. And we will be coming to tenant association meetings. I've talked to the managers, each of these developments. Terry, who many of you know, who manages the WISE portfolio, will be going to each of the meetings because people need to dispose of their garbage in the proper places, and we need to tell them where to do it. So the partnership will be really important. The mayor has piloted a program at 10 developments throughout the city, and with using dry ice. This is a humane way of extermination. If that is successful, we will look to branch out in other places. This is a continuing conversation that I know we will have. So
okay, and I see a couple of tenant leaders in the room. Hang on one second. Hold your question. We'll follow up, I promise. So they can expect to see you guys at their tenant meetings to talk about this issue. One place you might, I'm just looking at the location that people are concerned about, you might want to consider, because at 89th and Amsterdam, using compactors at 589 Amsterdam, I wonder if that would be possible. I always see loose garbage at that location.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next is for DSNY and DOT. We have, again, Nick's here from Sanitation, and from DOT, Luis Sanchez is here, the Manhattan Borough Commissioner. Really appreciate them. And the question is, what are we going to do with these people who don't clean up after their dogs?
Yeah, so that is a problem citywide that we have been battling. So the protocol for us in terms of issuing a violation, for those who don't know, we just need to see you do it. So it does sometimes require some help from neighbors to get in touch with us, especially if they have a person in their neighborhood that's always walking their dog and never picking up. Everyone works on a very similar schedule. Like, they take their dog out usually the same time, and if we can narrow down those time frames for us and our enforcement folks, it makes it a lot easier for us to issue violations. But it is difficult when they see our enforcement guys out. It's like when, you know, you have cops at a stop sign, everybody magically stops at the stop sign that day. We do efforts where we're in unmarked vehicles, but we can't focus on certain areas all the time. Our enforcement agents are spread pretty thin citywide, so we do ask that, you know, if we could get those timeframes and those information, and that information, it helps a great deal. We also issue for not keeping your dog on a leash, which actually is much easier, and we issue at a higher frequency than not picking up after your dog. And for your dog going on like public property, or like, you know, if they're going on your neighbor's yard, we can actually issue for that. We just need to see them doing it. We are currently in the works of changing our messaging and trying new efforts on social media and other ways, just trying to attack this problem, because we are having this issue citywide. But in terms of the signage, about maybe 10 or 12 years ago, we used to make those illegal dumping signs and those clean up after your dog signs. The funding for that department was cut, and we no longer make signs. It was kind of a dual effort. From my understanding, since it was before I was even, you know, involved in government, or even working for that matter, that there was an effort to sort of eliminate what was deemed non-essential signs on poles throughout the city. So things like that, no dumping and stuff like that. And that partnered with the fact that there were budget cuts. That department was gone. So we don't actually have the capacity to make those signs anymore. We also saw that they weren't as effective, numbers-wise, at least when they were gone and when we had them. So, you know, it is a battle that we're fighting, that the commissioner is really set on fighting, the dog waste and littering throughout the city, that we're really spending a lot of time and effort trying to attack with new different initiatives.
Hang on one second. I just wanted to make sure I heard you right. So if you see a pattern of somebody walking their dog and not cleaning up after it, call 311, give the exact location and the time, and an unmarked sanitation car will come out and possibly
We
take
can. The other best way is just to, I always file 311 complaints, but you can get in touch with me as well, because we have I can actually send stuff directly to Chief Klingler, who's the Chief of Enforcement, to say, hey, you know, we got this from the council member's office. Can we monitor this area for 2 weeks?
Are you offering your email address?
Of course, I always do.
All right. Well, why don't you say it out loud, and then we'll put it on the material on our website.
Well, if anybody has a pen, N is in Nick, CIRCHARO, so my name, N Chicaro, at dsny.nyc.gov. And I also will put some of my cards on the table out front too, but you can always call the council member's office, and they regularly get in contact with me as well, so they can provide that to you.
Louis, before it goes there, just I want to say that it was the council right prior to mine that passed a law saying no extraneous signs. And I believe that the city has taken that a little too much to heart, and I think we are now at the point where we perhaps need a few more signs. So I would ask, when you're at One Police Plaza, that you tell them that for 5 years, we have somebody come into our office, at least 1 or 2 people a week, asking for the sign that you guys used to have. And I would ask that you start making it again. I don't think the issue of budget cuts are an issue anymore. And we make signs, and then people eliminate them. Mm-hmm. But the demand is high, and people do think it's effective. If you look outside PS 84, for example, they've put up their own handwritten signs, and actually the amount of the problem there has decreased significantly. Also, if you could let us know, and we'll put this on our website, how many enforcement tickets did you issue last year for our district?
Sure, I could definitely look that up. And also, this has been something that has been brought up because people always request signs. A lot of council members' office request signs, so I do think there is sort of a groundswell for opening this back up.
Oh, great.
From a
So
few
the
members.
captains will let me know whether or not you actually bring it up at the meeting at One Police Plaza. All right, Mr. Sanchez.
So I just wanted to say, as someone who owns a dog and walks his dog and picks up after his dog, I certainly sympathize with the issue from time to time. In terms of putting signs up on our poles, I think the only concern is how practical it is, only because metal signs have to be at least 7 feet from the ground. So if they're people walking their dog, they're facing the ground or they're looking at eye level. So whether people will see it, that's
Well,
one thing.
let's look into it a little more.
Yeah.
The signs are
But-
right on the tree guards, so this isn't
That's-
making.
That's
we'll
certainly,
pursue it.
yeah, that's something, that I see in my neighborhood, tree guards or posted on buildings or
Okay.
private property, but we can certainly evaluate any proposals.
All right, thank you. So the corner of 96th, I'm going to stay with you, Commissioner. The corner of 96th and West End has been just such a vexing problem for those of you. Does anyone live around there or deal with the traffic that backs up in the morning? Okay, good, a few people. Wow.
So you and I have been at that location pretty recently. We looked at the issue. Obviously, the biggest challenge is we need to preserve enough crossing time for the school children and pedestrians. They're the ones that, need the time to cross. As a result, there's not sufficient time for traffic. And what traffic will then do is either try to run the amber and red light, try to take shortcuts. So a couple things that we're looking at, and we're certainly we're scheduling to install something that we call quick curb, which is the hardened plastic barriers that we put along the center line. What that does is it prevents people who want to make the left turn to kind of take the shortcut. They basically have to slow down to make the left turn. So that's one thing that we're looking to schedule to install. The other thing is looking at some sidewalk bump outs where we can reduce the crossing distance that pedestrians and school children have. So those are some things that we are looking at right now.
Okay, Captain, did you want to add to that, or no? No, you're good. Okay, sorry. We're going to go on to the next question. This is a very big issue in our district, which has to do with gas shutoffs and then not turned back on. So I'm going to ask the representative from Con Edison, Kimberly Williams, who's here, thank you, and Byron from DOB to talk about what we can do to make that faster and better.
All right, good evening, everyone. So when gas service is disconnected, as noted, it can take quite a bit for it to be restored. What happens when gas service is disconnected is Con Edison will work with the building owner and their respective contractor or plumber in order to clarify what the issue is. We like to think of it in two ways, kind of in front of the meter and behind the meter. So everything that is dealing with gas being transmitted or distributed in the streets, that's in front of the meter, and that's Con Edison's responsibility to fix, and we're usually out there for those kind of issues right away. Everything that's inside a building, behind the meter, is the building's responsibility. And depending on the nature of the issue and how extensive it is, it can take a really long time for the building owner and the plumber to address all of those issues. Depending on what it is, they may have to get different certifications, different levels of inspections have to be done, and there's just a great deal of work that goes into that. Once that's done, and the DOB inspects, and Byron can speak more to that, Con Edison will come back out, do an inspection. If it passes, then we can turn it on. We can't manage the part that's on the building owner side. We can't deal with anything that's taking place on the behind the meter. side, but we will work just to make sure that the issue is clear and that everybody knows their roles and responsibility. There are 4 things that we've done. They're outlined in the books if you got them outside. But just to go over them quickly, we have been prioritizing heat and hot water turn-ons during heat season, so that's anytime between October and May. We have been making that a priority to turn service back on for those issues. So once we're contacted by the building and everything is actually in the correct order, we'll go back out and try to get those turned back on within 48 hours. That's our goal. It's not always a goal that we meet, but it is something that we are working towards. We've worked with building owners and contractors to make sure that our manual, which is posted on our website, is clear so that everybody knows what it is exactly that they have to do. We also produced an infographic, which if anybody wants a copy, you can see me after the meeting and I'll make sure you get a copy so that you know who's responsible for what at the different points of gas restoration. And we just continue to work with the DOB to make sure that we are sharing information with each other. We know what's going on with any particular building, and we can continue to make process improvements. So that's it from our end.
Yes, from our end, Con Edison is the last stop. Once gas is turned off at a property, what has to be done immediately is a licensed master plumber has to be hired to identify the issue, what amount of repairs needs to be done, the kinds of inspections that need to be performed, and then once that work is completed, the licensed master plumber will request what is called a request to restore gas. I know that sounded very short, but it actually takes some time. Many times what occurs is that the pipes are located behind the walls, so the work becomes more extensive, more complex, and they have to engage in what is called a roughing inspection, which is everything behind the wall, and finishing inspection, which is everything outside of the wall, meaning the valves and fixtures that you can actually see. We definitely coordinate with Con Edison. Once everything has been completed, we often communicate with our friends at Con Edison so that the gas is restored. But the most important part is that that work takes place, the inspections occur so that we ensure that things are going to be safe once gas is re-administered into those pipes. And then finally, Con Ed will come into play.
Okay, and this is most often a problem for our rent-regulated tenants when it takes so long. And so I'm going to move this over to HPD now. We have Lacey Tauber from HPD, this agency is responsible for addressing tenant harassment problems, and she's a senior project manager there. Lacey?
Yeah, so I want to look at the actual question because I think there's 2 parts.
Well,
but about the gas, and then also can speak a little bit about construction as harassment more generally. But so as you just heard, the gas getting the gas turned back on can be pretty complicated. But this is actually a really timely question. It's something that's come to our attention as something that's happening more frequently. Owners using turning off the gas as a way to harass their tenants. And whether or not we think harassment is involved, our role in the process of getting the gas turned back on is we monitor the work in progress, and in some cases we can do an order in housing court to compel the owner to restore service as quickly as possible. And then just to speak a little bit to what we're doing to address construction as harassment more generally. Some of you may be aware that there was just a package of legislation passed called Stand for Tenant Safety, and that is really shining a light on this issue, and there's a couple things that have come out of that. Oops, sorry about that. One of those is a construction as harassment task force that we're participating in with the DOB, with City Council representatives and folks from the mayor's office to hear from tenants directly about the harassment issues that they're facing and to design some recommendations about how to address those issues. And of course, in general, you know, we respond to 311 complaints, we issue violations. For other kinds of utilities, we can restore heat and hot water and electricity by making the repairs ourselves and billing the landlord through our emergency repair program. And we have a lot of outreach programs. We have the ABCDs of housing, you can see on our website. And we're doing a lot of outreach events and really working on making sure that tenants know their rights.
So what does it take to get the emergency repair program? Because we have tenants here who have lived without gas for like a year. At what point?
Right. The ERP is for some of those other violations, like the heat and hot water. The gas, I think, is not part of that. But again, we can do the order in housing court. So if someone's having an issue like that, it's probably already been brought to our attention, and you know, we would deal on a case-by-case basis with, you know, how long has it been, what is the owner doing or not doing to make the repairs, and you know, we would assess whether it would be appropriate to take that kind of action.
Okay, I don't think, and the problem is big in this district.
Yeah.
And I don't know of any time when HPD has stepped in and taken somebody to court. I'll find out more, but we want to do that more.
Yeah, and absolutely, if folks are facing this issue, you know, we want to help you address it.
So, Byron, I'm going to put you on the spot. One of the bills that Lacey talked about was the Office of the Tenant Advocate. And the mayor signed this into law that there would be an Office of the Tenant Advocate now at the Department of Buildings, because often the inspector that needs to come out is from the Department of Buildings. We, several of the people in this room actually have emailed me that they've tried to find that department or that, you know, name tenant advocate, and it's not on your website. So I'm wondering, like, do you have plans to put Office of the Tenant Advocate up on your website?
Yes, the answer so far is that we have a buildings marshal office, and we also have our office, which is community affairs, the office for which I work. If you have any concerns with regard to the sense that construction is being used in your building as a tool of harassment to make you feel uncomfortable, you can email me directly once you've obtained a complaint number. Often, if you don't obtain a complaint number, that's fine as well. My email is B for Byron, first initial, last name spelled MUNOZ @buildings.nyc.gov. And things that you should look for is excessive debris in the hallways or public areas, doors that are not covered to protect
This
from
is during construction.
during construction, of course. Also, for instance, any storage of construction materials, waste, or materials that they're going to use for the renovations of certain apartments, and any work that is being done after hours without a permit. After hours for us is before 7 a.m. or after 6 p.m. on Monday through Friday, or any work that takes place on weekends requires an after hours permit.
So the reason we passed this law and the mayor signed it into law was because what you just described is what's been happening for the last 5 years.
Right, and we're actively,
And
I'm sorry.
So I would ask you at One Police Plaza to just bring it back that this community is hungry for an Office of the Tenant Advocate.
Definitely will.
Okay, thank you. Next we have I know you're in a pickle on that. So we have the question for the Department of Finance. Sheila Feinberg, another person who I work closely with in government and who's terrific. If you could address the issue of, I know the mayor hasn't raised property taxes, nor has the city council, but yet the assessments keep going up, and it means that for homeowners, co-op condos, single-family homeowners, we're getting priced out of our homes. I know it's the same thing with commercial, but could you talk about what the Department of Finance is doing to address the assessment problem?
Sure. So again, my name is Sheila Feinberg. I'm the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs at the Department of Finance. I'm also joined by Stina Trainer, who's our new Assistant Commissioner at the Department of Finance. So assessments are complicated, as many of you know, if you read our Notice of Property Value. Part of what makes it complicated is that we're dictated by state law about how we do our assessments, particularly for Class 2 properties, such as condos and co-ops. So we have to look at comparable buildings. I won't go through the whole assessment process, but let me just say right now, it's complicated. If any of you have specific questions about your assessments, you can always feel free to get in touch with Councilmember Rosenthal's office or with me directly. I will say that one of the things that we are aware of at the Department of Finance and with the city as well with rising property taxes is that we are...
Property assessments. We have not raised raised property taxes.
Right. We haven't raised property taxes, but assessments do affect.
But the assessments cause the
right.
tax. Okay, just saying.
Okay. Anyway, what I was trying to get to is that we are in response to some of these rising costs around the board, is that we have increased our exemptions eligibility. So people that are seniors or disabled can qualify now for an exemption. We increased the income limit from $37,399 to $58,399. So that is, in a way, trying to offset some of the ramifications of the increased assessments. Another thing that we've done at the Department of Finance is also expanded our veterans exemptions programs for those that are veterans in the audience. We have expanded the alternative veterans and the eligible funds veterans, and that's not just the Department of Finance, that's the city, that's the state, working together to offer property tax relief for constituents in the city. I wanted to also highlight, I think part 2 here is, are there ways to appeal the assessment mechanism? Not really the mechanism, but there is a way to appeal your assessment, which is the notice of property value. The tentative notice of property value goes out this 3rd week of January. It's by state law, that's when it has to go out. We encourage you all to look at it, to open it up. It's a big mailing, but it's an important mailing. There's information in that mailing that includes ways to appeal your assessment, to have somebody come out and reassess your property. So you can ask for that through the Department of Finance, and you have until March 15th to do that every year, or you can do it with an independent independent tax commission, and that deadline is March 1st. So if you feel that the assessment that we've given to your property is wrong, we've miscalculated your square footage, we don't have the right number of floors, whatever the issue is, you can always appeal your assessment. But there are deadlines associated with that appeal process. After the appeal process is completed, then you will see your final notice of property value, and that will come out in June. So those are some of the steps people can take.
Okay, it's a source of frustration, and I know the mayor has agreed to set up a property tax commission along with the city council. Eager for them to really jump into it, but the assessments are really making life difficult for middle class people who live in this district who own their apartments. If you could bring that back to One Police Plaza.
Sure.
Okay. There's been a question, I'm sorry. A question for those of you who are public school parents, there's going to be a change in the middle school admission process. So Eileen Altschul is here, who's the superintendent for Education District 3. Really appreciate your coming. What are the changes and what's going to happen?
Good evening. So the first definite change right now is that we are moving to blind ranking. So previously there has always been revealed ranking for all of the students when they rank their middle school choices, and definitively as part of the chancellor's equity and access plan is that all of the districts will be moving to blind ranking, and we are the last of like three, one of three to actually take this on. So that will be happening next year. At the same time, we're hoping to move forward with and foster a academic diversity plan. So we have been looking within our middle schools, sorry. So we are discussing and presenting one scenario where we're looking at having 10% level 1 offers and 15% level 2 offers to students to go into a middle school when they're selecting their middle school. And we're hoping to get feedback on that scenario at this time to see how we should move forward. We've been engaging with families, CEC, all of the principals within the district to get their input as we make this decision. As far as timing, we will be making a definitive decision by the beginning of June. I'm so sorry.
Great, thank you. And just to clarify, for those of you who aren't thinking about the public school situation in our city, our district, our city, our education district is the most segregated district in the city. I've worked very hard on this. The local Community Education Council and the Department of Education took some good steps, first steps, in 2 years ago in order to desegregate our schools. We have to do it at every level. We can't stop thinking about this. And the plan that the superintendent just laid out is a baby step, but it's a baby step we have to take in order to improve the diversity problem in our district. I support it fully.
Thank you for your support.
Yeah. Next is for HRA. Kenneth Charles is here. Thank you for coming. Tell Jermaine we miss him. And this is a question about a new program that the city has. This is again for tenants who are being harassed, and some get harassed so much the building owner tries to evict that tenant, often for no good reason. And often it's the case that the building owner that wants to evict the tenants who are rent regulated will go after those tenants who are the most vulnerable. And one of the things that research told us is that when the tenant and the building owner go to housing court, the building owner comes with a lawyer. And the tenant, of course, doesn't have access to a lawyer. And so 90% of those cases, the building owner wins, and they always have a lawyer. So the city is now funding lawyers for low-income tenants, and this is a program that HRA is rolling out. Zip code by zip code, we're once again going to be last, but now there is a right to counsel.
Right.
And if you could just sort of talk about the timing and when the zip codes in our district will have access, because there are pockets of people who really need it, but are in zip codes that hide that.
Hello, how you doing? Thank you for your support.
Yeah.
So we really haven't got a definitive answer on the timeline, but I will get it to you as soon as I can. As far as the zip codes go, you know, we started out in some of the other boroughs, and we haven't really gotten to this neighborhood as of yet. But you did a good job of explaining who really gets it, and we started in the outer communities with the less income folks, and so we're working back towards you guys. And as soon as we get a definitive answer, I will let you know.
Thanks.
But it's definitely an idea that we're trying to make sure that we touched on in the entire city.
So how's it working in Brownsville or in Jamaica?
I was at a meeting last night that in one of the zip codes we had it was at one point it was 20% representation. It went up to 66% representation. And obviously, if you're represented by an attorney, you have a better chance of at least coming in even if not
And
winning.
how have the outcomes been for those now 60%, which is remarkable?
Pretty good, actually, because the goal is to keep people in their apartments. As you know, in this city, we can't really afford any more new homeless folks. So the goal is really to try to keep people in their apartments, and we will do whatever we can to get that accomplished.
Okay, and that gets back to the Office of the Tenant Advocate, right? So the city will know, tenants will know that all agencies are really trying to protect the tenants.
That's the goal.
Okay, cool. Next question is for the Department of Environmental Protection. Michael DeLoach is here. He's the representative. He's another colleague in government who I've worked with for a long time and really appreciate all of your work, all of your public service. There's a question about noise level restrictions in the neighborhood. For emergency vehicles, we get questions, about why is the siren so loud? New development means new HVAC systems that are very noisy.
Yeah, noise is definitely a concern that we hear often, especially on the Upper West Side. There's no difference in the sound in different parts of the neighborhood. It's a universal level. But we do, we have updated, we had legislation passed last year, I think with your help, to make it easier to identify or to inspect the sources through 311 of people either doing illegal construction overnight or barking dogs or fighting or whatever it ends up being. Originally, we had to go into people's apartments who made the complaint to get to do the inspection. Now with this legislation, which is going through rulemaking, we'll be able to do it from the street, which will hopefully be more effective. A lot of people weren't comfortable with the city going into their apartments. We don't have real-time inspectors, unfortunately, because of resources. So even if you called, we would have to come another time, which didn't really make sense. So I think this will go a long way in helping people when you make your complaints. It's really important to do through 311. For us to be able to get the inspectors to you, but also to keep data of where these issues are. And if we see, construction site or something over time having a large amount of complaints, it gets more attention. So again, 311 is really important. Is there anything more specific?
Well, do you happen to know, a question we often get is the sirens it feels so loud. I mean, I know recently the tenor of it changed a little bit, which people actually like, but it's the decibel level. People say that, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, there's no traffic, and, this really loud siren goes by. Or, like, over the last 10 years, have sirens become louder?
So I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that the mayor's office is working diligently on sort of a universal noise sound policy, and they're looking very closely at ambulances, fire engines, et cetera. There is a pilot that is, I think, St. Vincent's that is doing the European-style sirens. That's sort of the up and down. Right. I think we're looking to see, there was some concern that because it was a little bit more subtle, it wouldn't work for emergencies. I think that it's been effective and it's actually working pretty well. So I think I might be, jumping the gun a bit, but I think they're working on sort of some more universal requirements specifically to ambulances, police, fire engines, et cetera, in the imminent future with the new technology that exists and sort of a track record of showing that this new system, sort of borrowing from our European friends, is actually working. So more to come, I think, on that.
Great. Thank you very much. We're going back to the MTA, to Kate Contino again. The M104 bus is the bane of our existence here on the west side. Are there any plans to put limited express bus routes on the 104 line, or will something in the bus action plan help us? What's going on?
Okay. Let me take the first part of that question, and then I'll go into the bus action plan. So in order for limited stop service to be considered, the ridership has to be high enough to justify 6-minute headways for over 2 hours at a time. Now, let me explain what that means. We have guidelines to determine how frequent we'll run buses based on the number of people who are riding it. And on our more popular routes, the more people who ride it, the more regularly the bus will go. And when that interval between buses gets down to 6 minutes for a 2-hour period or more, say the morning peak or the evening peak, then we would, under the current guidelines, analyze that route for limited service. At the moment, the M104 does not meet those thresholds. However, we were up here last week with New York City Transit President Byford, who committed to monitoring the M104 service adjustment very, very closely. But moreover, this week we announced the New York City Transit bus plan. And this bus plan is far-reaching. It is looking forward. We will be taking both lessons learned from our Select Bus Service program, which has been in the city since 2008, and the Staten Island Express bus redesign that we've been working on the last several years, both of which are available online, to look at every aspect of our bus routes, where they're going, who they're serving, what are the root causes of delays and unreliability, what can we do to improve the service that is out there. And that was just announced this week. The announcement is on mta.info, and there will be a lot more about that in the coming months and years.
If people already have experience with the M104 and already know a lot of the questions that you'll be researching, can they send you that information somehow?
Sure.
How do they do that?
Through your office.
Through our office. Okay.
Or we'll follow up.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Next is a question for Parks and Recreation. We have Commissioner Bill Castro here. And thank you for attending every year. We really appreciate you. This is a question about the bike path in the green, along the Greenway. This was something that we put funding in for quite some time ago, but nothing's really been done. I know it's a complicated project.
Right. Well, I wouldn't say nothing's been done, but a lot has been done. The design work was done, the bidding out of the contract was done, and we're now at the point where we're about to start construction fairly soon. This is part of a multi-site contract. There are 3 areas in the park where we're going to be doing the work, and the first one, we're meeting with the contractor tomorrow, actually, and we're going to determine when this work will be done from 72nd Street to 83rd Street. We don't want to interfere with the public's use of it during a peak time, so we're going to figure out, and we'll obviously work with you, council member, and thank you for the funding for this, when is the best time to do this. So that'll be starting very soon, however.
Okay. In the meantime, I just biked home from work today. The painted lines along the Greenway are gone. Would it be possible just to do that? I mean, at least to give indication for where people should go?
Right. Yeah, during the winter we can't really paint. So now that the weather's broken, I'll see if we can do that.
That would be great. Okay. The next question is for the PD. We're very lucky. We have a new commanding officer at the 2-0, Commander Timothy Mallon, and then we have Captain Seth Lynch at the 2-4. We're very lucky to have them. Okay, wait. Are you guys soaking that in?
No, we saw the question sent in advance.
I would just like to note that my colleagues don't tell me that that doesn't necessarily happen in every district.
So this is a ComStat thing, is what happens to us when we go downtown for ComStat, is we'll be saying something, and behind us, we'll be saying, no, we fixed the homeless problem, and behind us there'll be pictures scrolling of homeless.
Oh.
It's one of the things they do to us downtown, so we're always trying to kind of like quickly look around.
Oh, okay. Well, we really do appreciate both of you.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Rosenthal. Yes, it did sink in, and thank you. And I would just like to say thank you. I do very much appreciate and cherish the relationship that we've built up in the last year with your office from the 24th Precinct.
So the question has to do with the homeless outreach plan and how your offices interact with that.
Yes, well, there's a few things that we do on a precinct level, and then secondly on a department level, and then even reaching out a little bit further beyond the police department, because first and foremost, it's really about providing services, even when services aren't necessarily asked for, but there is a need. We are always there to offer a solution. Whenever one of our officers comes into contact with a homeless individual on patrol, we immediately speak to the person. As we're speaking to them, we're assessing the individual to determine whether there's a medical, psychological need that needs to be addressed right away, right there at that moment. And I got to admit, especially now we're going into the warmer weather, a lot of times the individuals do refuse, or maybe they're just not. We're still working on developing the trust, but maybe not coming from us. They might not be receptive right away. However, when the officers do leave, they do provide the individuals with contact cards. On these contact cards are a list of resources and locations where homeless individuals can go to throughout the city. We have men's shelter, women's shelter, families with kids, families without kids, even drop-in shelters where there might not necessarily be a bed, but you could still go in, relax, come inside from the elements, and sit down on a chair. Also, every time throughout the year, every time the temperature drops below 32 degrees, which hopefully, again, coming into May, we won't have any more of these days, at least until the late fall. The New York City Police Department does dispatch our homeless outreach unit to actively go out and address individuals that are out there to ensure that that we can take them to someplace warm, whether it's a hospital or a drop-in shelter. Also, we work one-on-one with the homeless outreach unit as conditions arise. Just in late February, we did do an operation with our homeless outreach unit. We did make a number of contacts. However, every person that we came in contact with, there was no reason to remove the individual for whether psychological or medical reasons. So, but again, we did provide the homeless card. First and foremost, I know I'm kind of going on, but I have with me in attendance some of our neighborhood coordination officers, which I would like to get a chance to introduce a little bit later. And this exists throughout the city, but in our precinct, we do it through our neighborhood coordination officers. The department does offer a co-response unit where if we do encounter an individual where there is a need for a clinician right there on the scene, we can get a clinician within a very short turnaround time, within an hour to a number of hours, to the location to immediately assess that individual right there. So we are doing a lot with outreach, but sometimes we have to get, in many of the cases, unless there is a severe psychological or medical concern to get this individual immediate help, a lot of it does depend on the cooperation of the individual.
Captain Mallon, feel free to take a shot at that one as
he
well.
answered 90% of it.
The other thing I heard you talk about the other night at the police precinct meeting was your work on e-bikes, which has also been an issue in this district, maybe.
All right.
So whichever one you want.
So I'll do both. Seth covered most of the homeless issue. Sure. So going back to homeless really quickly. If you have a homeless individual in close proximity, as a disclaimer, if you see them breaking the law or creating an unsanitary condition, or they're emotionally disturbed and possibly a threat, you call 911. We will come. We will enforce the law. That's the disclaimer. However, you cannot arrest your way out of the homeless crisis. Between 2000 and 2010, the NYPD was kind of like the lead agency. And in my experience, I came on in March of 2000, they used to give us code sheets. And it was about what lever could you pull to try and get a homeless person arrested and removed. That changed with this mayoral administration and when Commissioner Bratton came in. Now what we do is this. If you have a homeless encampment or somebody who has created a makeshift shelter and they're not violating the law. Remember, it's not a crime just to be homeless. We don't come and look for some strange reason to arrest them. What happens is this. You let us know through 311, through 911, better yet, come in and see us. You can see my special projects lieutenant. You can see me during the daytime hours. If you have a cell phone picture, great. We'll call downtown. The department partnered with other agencies, such as the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, the Department of Homeless Services, the Sanitation Department. There's like 5 different agencies that come out. What happens is, so if you have that encampment, that guy who's sleeping in the same spot every night, we'll schedule a date. They come, they take before pictures, they send 2 social workers first, the day before the operation. The social workers reach out to the homeless individual to try and connect him with services. Then they tell that individual, tomorrow, the whole team will be here, including sanitation and the police. The goal of it is not to arrest them. The goal of it is to clean up, try and get that person into services, and if they even walk away, if they abandon personal property, we don't just throw it out, we voucher it, and we leave a receipt with them, and we say, here you go. And then we take post pictures. So it's a multi-agency kind of approach, and we find it far more successful in trying to wrest our way out of it. So that's one of the things the PD does. E-bikes. Okay. There's 2 kinds of e-bikes, if everyone doesn't know. There's the kind that are legal as per the New York City Code are the kinds that simply, when you're pedaling, they provide light assistance to you. Think of that, you know, if someone wants to start riding a bike and maybe they don't want it to be so strenuous to go up hills, they use a pedal assist bike. They're fine. We have no issue. The ones that are really problematic are the ones that, especially we see them zipping around the Upper West Side, usually by delivery people from restaurants, are the ones that have a throttle. They're not being pedaled. The operator has their hand on a throttle or a button, and the bike is zipping along. I consider these things a scourge. And the problem with e-bikes, these kind of e-bikes, is that you have young people or elderly citizens that walk out and they think it's okay to cross the street because they see a bicycle coming, but then it's moving 25 miles an hour and it's on them before they know it. The city council gave us great help. This is the problem we have with our enforcement, is that you have the operators of the bikes are sometimes often hardworking delivery people who are immigrants. When we issue a summons, we seize the bike. Our police officers are not heartless, and they have discretion, and they were reluctant to engage in that kind of enforcement. The city council and the mayor gave us a great amount of help in this. Now what we can do is, instead of summoning the operator of the bike, we summons the business. So the business that employs it gets held responsible. That's thanks to Councilwoman Rosenthal and her counterparts. That was great assistance to us. So our cops, 20 times this year already, we've conducted operations in seized e-bike. That's enough. We have 20 bikes vouched in our garage right now at the 20th precinct. And we'll continue to do it, especially as the summer months come and we do more and more bicycle enforcement operations. You'll see more of it, and we'll report back to you at our monthly community council meetings.
Yes, I would just like to take it take a step further. Yes, it was a great help with the community council, but however, this legislation was definitely spearheaded by efforts from right here from this community in the Upper West Side. I just want to my partner Captain Manuel is sitting directly behind Councilmember Rosenthal. And what Captain Manuel has done here in the 24th precinct is we have had a lot of feedback one-on-one with the council member's office and also various interested community members here in the precinct. We really wanted to make sure that we went about this and we handled it right, being that there was so much work that went in over the summer to get the legislation passed. Captain Manuel has reached out with to our Legal Affairs Bureau here in the NYPD. Earlier this year, we did conduct an operation. Not only that it was our officers on patrol, we actually brought out practicing attorneys with us to address this issue and address the business, and more importantly, address the businesses as well, a source of many of our complaints. So we did go out there and we did seize a number of e-bikes, but to take it a step further, the businesses were held accountable. Just last week, we did have another initiative, again spearheaded by Captain Manuel, where again we took 12 more electronic bikes. We did take a total of 30 for the year. And again, it's not about the hardworking individual that's out there in the elements going back and forth trying to make a living. It's we did go back and make sure the businesses were held accountable, because from our community complaints, we are getting a lot of complaints that they are the source of the concern.
And also to be clear, we're not hostile to businesses. Our crime prevention officer, he goes out before the operations and he hands out literature to the businesses telling them this is illegal, we're going to come and we're going to do this operation, we're going to seize it. So it's not a surprise for them. We're very fair to them and we let them know it's illegal first.
Sure.
From DOT's perspective, certainly if there are businesses, restaurants that, let's say, have e-bikes, or you see they're riding on the sidewalk, et cetera, by all means, call 311, report the name of the business. There is a commercial cycling law that's out there where we can send inspectors to the business to make sure that the delivery people are registered, they have the proper equipment, they have the training. So if they're violating one aspect of the law, they're probably violating other things. Then we will certainly have inspectors go out and issue summons.
Great, thank you very much. I actually just got a text from someone who said, great presentation, Captain Allen, really appreciate your work on the e-bikes, and they're asking if you could possibly send some, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you could possibly send some officers to our bike giveaway on Saturday, because it's right next to a bike lane, and we often end up giving away helmets to the delivery guys. So it could be a perfect opportunity just to educate people. Thank you. Officer Lynch, Captain Lynch, did you want to introduce the other NCOs who are here?
Yes. I know a few of you were in attendance. I do see some familiar faces at our NCO rollout event on January 30th. The neighborhood policing model, it's been introduced throughout the city for the past 3 years. Actually, Captain Mallon, in his previous assignment, he was actually one of the brain trusts behind the neighborhood policing model, working behind the scenes to iron out a lot of the creases for the finished product that we do have. But again, our neighborhood coordination officers in the 24th precinct, I have the officers from Sector A, which cover West 86th Street to West 110th Street, from Broadway to Riverside Park. Officer Paige Hilbig, and Officer Giovanni Soto, and also from our sector B, which is West 86th Street to West 100th Street, from Broadway to Central Park West, I have Officer Robles and Officer Gomez. Just if I could say another few words, really one of the main, and I'm sure I might get corrected by Captain Mallon at my left, but one of the main, my personal vision with the neighborhood policing for the Upper West Side is really communication. We're trying to reach out to different folks, maybe folks that aren't here tonight for whatever reason. Maybe they're working, they're just tied up with other responsibilities. Maybe they've never come to a town hall forum or our community precinct community council meeting. It's just something that never occurred to them. Maybe they're not comfortable. We're really trying to open up the dialogue between the community and our police precincts, and especially the vehicle through which we're doing this is our neighborhood policing officers. And I believe even Helen has it up on her website. You can go to the 24th Precinct website. You can look at Councilmember Rosenthal's website. These are officers that we're really trying to get out in the community to introduce on a one-to-one first name basis. Also, if you go on to either one of our websites, each one of their cell phones, direct cell phone number is on the website. Again, that doesn't take the place of 911, 311 if you need immediate police response. But again, not everybody calls, and this is a profession-wide issue throughout the nation. Unfortunately, not everybody reaches out to the police agency when there is a need. But a familiar officer, first name basis, they have their cell phone number and their email addresses provided to you, and please use them. If by any means maybe there's a misprint on the website that the phone call might not go through, please reach out. Actually, myself and Councilmember Rosenthal have spoken about this in the past. Please reach out to either one of us. I'll make sure, I'll speak to you myself, and I'll definitely get you in touch with one of our neighborhood policing officers. Also, real quick, there is a social media element as well. Our 24th Precinct Facebook page is up and running to supplement our pre-existing Twitter account. If any of you guys are up on Facebook and would like to use that as a vehicle to, and listen, this is good, bad, or indifferent. Any communication is encouraged. You can reach out to us definitely via Facebook as well.
We'll have this this is coming to the 2-0 in July, so I'm here by myself tonight. In July we'll have our neighborhood coordination officers.
I'm sorry, and I would be remiss if I wanted to introduce one of my most trusted partners, my neighborhood policing sergeant, Deshay Peschal, who's also, come on, stand up. Who also, by the way, she comes to the 24th Precinct. She was actually a traffic safety and patrol officer here in the 20th Precinct, so she is definitely a member of the Upper West Side community.
Her team did an amazing presentation the other night for the Sector C community. It was really great. And people should, if you're interested, hang on one second. If you're interested in learning more about the NCO program, you can learn more about it online. This is a program that the City Council requested be funded in all of our Mayor de Blasio in our first term, and we added funding for 1,300 more police officers to do this work. Which is very exciting. Again, we live in probably the safest zip codes in the city. So the first NCOs started in the Far Rockaways, in Brownsville and Central Brooklyn, and now it's making its way here. And from what I hear from my colleagues who represent those areas, it's just been a great success for the community. The community really has appreciated, again, neighborhood policemen who get to know what the issues are, what the local issues are, and try to address them. This has been a successful program. So, again, I really want to appreciate your work on that. Roberta Seamer is here from Community Board 7. She's the chair. Did you want to say something about e-bikes, or did I miss that moment?
No, I think we appreciate what you said, because we had heard that the delivery men were having to pay big fines to get their bikes back, so this is a much better solution. And we've also heard really good things about the community-based policing, so we're anxious to get it in the 2.0 as well.
Great. Also, for the Department of Environmental Protection, Umberto Galarraza just sort of slipped in there to take over from Michael, so thank you for that. This ends the pre-question segment where we got the questions earlier. Now we're going to be taking questions from the community. I know we have someone right here. Raise your hand, Marisa. And right over here, Rita is going to be taking questions. they'll identify people, but can we just take sort of a 1-second stretch, and this is how I would ask that you do the stretch. Could we thank our representatives from city government who are here? I really do feel so blessed to get to work with them every day. This is the dedicated team, so we really appreciate you. And we're going to start over here. Yeah?
Just raise your hand if you want so I can get to as many as possible.
Okay. Diane Warco from West
Someone down
66th
there,
Street.
so.
Thank you, Helen, for always providing these events for us. I don't know whether it's a question or a statement. It's a question. Legally, it's a question. I am so concerned about the placement of residential building garbage bags on the curbs. I'm so tired of looking at garbage, and I think it's another invitation for the rats. But the most current concern is that building on West 66th Street, which is a street for crosstown buses. If they go on 65th Street, now that we know the owner owns part of 65th Street entrance, we've got the crosstown bus and the buses from the school buses from the Guild for the Blind. And if that building puts trash bags out on the street with the Department of Sanitation trucks blocking the traffic, it's going to be a nightmare. My question is it too late to mandate that these buildings put in freight entrances so that the sanitation trucks can back in, as I see them doing at Juilliard? Juilliard was built almost 50 years ago, and they figured it out.
Helen, you want me to?
Oh, sure.
Community Board 7 has been working with the 65th, 66th Street Block Association to discuss some of the issues with buses. I'm going to let sanitation talk about the sanitation trucks, but we are very much aware, and there is a block association, and at some point there is a website now for the 65th, 66th Street Block Association, so you can look for information there. And at some point, we will be setting up with the council member's office a construction oversight working group.
And to touch on the garbage bags, I completely agree. I think with the larger buildings, to my knowledge at least, there's nothing in the building code that requires these buildings to have things like compactors or freight entrances like you said they have at Juilliard. I think that is an opportunity, especially since throughout the city we on such a large rat initiative in places like the Upper West Side and by our offices way downtown on Worth Street, by Canal Street. You have all these buildings that are 30, 40 stories high with 50 bags of garbage on the street. What does it matter if we have a covered, enclosed receptacle on that corner when you have 10 buildings on a block that put out 1,000 bags of garbage every week? So I think there is an opportunity there for some sort of maybe regulation regarding compactors or just enclosed storage areas for their waste, as opposed to having them just put them out curbside in black bags. But for right now, that's not something that is that's regulated.
Are there, although they can't leave it out for like they have to put it out
Yes,
within a certain time
they have
period.
to put it out after 4 p.m. the night before, and it's picked up between 6 and 2, depending on where they are on the route. Usually
Do you issue violations if they put it out at 3?
Yeah,
or-
we do issue violations for early set out. But I think the larger scope is we have more and more of these buildings, and I agree there needs to be some sort of action plan for dealing with that, because as the space gets smaller in the city, the buildings are only going to get higher.
And I just want to add to it, maybe Carolyn, if you want to talk about this a bit. Diane, if you start to see a rat problem around there, we can call in the Department of Health and they will issue violations. Well, Carolyn can talk about it.
I mean, we'll inspect and respond to rat problems that develop as garbage mounts up. But I just wanted to also plug the Department of Sanitation's organics recycling program, because in those cases, the buildings that enroll in those programs will replace the mountains of bags with the brown bins that are rodent resistant and really effective at removing food waste from the waste stream that's what is attracting rodents in the first place. So, I think there are a lot of buildings in this district that have voluntarily opted into organics recycling, and I can't say more than I think it's one of the most effective tools we have in rodent prevention in the city.
Is there a timetable for making organics composting required for all neighborhoods?
So the plan right now is to have by the end of 2018 every community board in the city be enrolled in the organics program. I don't know per se what the road to mandatory is, as in like it's the same as the blue recycling and the green recycling. But the plan right now is we are still technically in the pilot. It's not citywide yet. By the end of 2018 is the goal to have it be citywide. And it does help containerize all of the food, which is the what the rats are going after. So it definitely could help with that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you to the 20th Precinct for the work they're doing in Amsterdam. Vivian from Helen's office, that she's really working with the tenants at Amsterdam houses. And for NYCHA, because the workers are doing the work with all this work that we have in our Amsterdam houses, the workers are really picking up garbage and everything. So I want to say thank you.
Yeah, you're really welcome. Just really, really quick, Amsterdam houses is, I was walking around there the other Friday night when we had an incident over there, and I was amazed. I was watching, we have police officers dedicated to Amsterdam houses. I was amazed with their rapport with the residents. You will be getting 2 neighborhood coordination officers solely dedicated to Amsterdam houses, just so you know.
Thank you. And they come to our meetings.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they'll continue, and they'll continue to do so. Yes.
Mhm. And the roofs are almost done, by the way. That was something. Do you remember when Shola came to Family Day?
I remember. We have the pictures.
So we took a tour on that day with her and with, at that time, Michael Kelly, the general manager, and pointed out to them that this had been sitting there for 3 years with nothing happening because they had lost a contractor. Anyway, now they have completed the work basically within 2 years, which is quite good. Yeah. Right. This is the roof repair.
Yes. So the work is getting done and the tenants are happy. We're not happy about this thing about the 35% rent increase. We got to work on that.
That's the president.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I see a lot of hands up, and just so you know, the people who have the microphones see you. So they know that you've got your hand raised. But yeah.
Hi, my name is Laura Van Straten. I'm at West End and 79th, and my question is for transportation and for Parks and Recreation. I just wanted to call your attention to the area where 79th Street crosses under the West Side Highway, and there's the roundabout where people are getting on and off the West Side Highway. That pavement has been uneven and pockmarked for months and months and months. And in addition, the buses idle there. And it's also where most people who commute by bike from this neighborhood enter and exit Riverside Park because it's the quickest way to the bike path. It's also typically the safest way to the bike path because otherwise you're running over people with dogs, people with strollers, and you can only gain so much speed in the park or else, yes, I do. I would really like to ask, whose responsibility is it to improve that pavement, to monitor the buses that are idling there, to improve signage so that drivers getting on and off that roundabout know to look for bikers, and to fix the bike lane so that it doesn't, in fact, put you as you're exiting east into the path where the buses tend to be, and the lane comes in from the southbound West Side Highway. It is a nightmare and really needs some attention.
I just want to double down on that question, Lauren. Thank you.
So the Department of Transportation is right now doing a, we've actually presented a reconstruction project of the rotunda where we're looking at installing some kind of bike lane, or whether it's a share lane. That's something we received comments from the community board, and we are looking to address that. We'll certainly continue to make whatever repairs we need to do, whether it's signage, markings, et cetera. We'll continue to do that. As far as the as far as buses idling, we can certainly contact, we'll reach out to the MTA about that, but also that's an enforcement issue with NYPD.
So hang on, there are a couple of follow-ups there. Kate, do you want to say something about the MTA piece, or Luke?
So the
Buses
specific
idling.
location I would have to look into, but if Luke, you want to say something about idling? No. We will look in that location. We'll see what
It's a
is
hot
going on
location.
in regard to our bus operations and what is happening there. We'll follow up.
It's exactly where they wait before they turn around on the line.
Okay.
And then, Louis, would you consider doing another walkthrough? We really appreciated your doing that on 96th Street. Maybe we could do another walkthrough at that location exactly.
Or a bike through. A bike through.
Even better. Even
Okay,
better.
I'll have my bike people, because I don't ride a bike, but certainly, but I'll do the walkthrough, they can do the bike through. We can schedule that.
Yeah, I'd really
And
appreciate it.
and certainly I'll
Because
bring the people who are the reconstruction team, who are making the designs, we'll also make sure they're there too.
That's exactly right. Thank you. But
And
Roberta?
CB7 wants to be on the walkthrough. But also you're doing a whole new, with the Parks Department, the whole new renovation of the rotunda. So that's going to change, it may be on the website, but there are going to be major changes to the rotunda. And I think the rerouting of the buses during that period. So maybe Parks can talk about that.
Well, it's really a DOT project, but the
Now you
the
know
ro-
what my day's like.
what's that?
We appreciate you and everything.
All right, I'll talk to you later. It is a DOT project, and it's a very major project. And underneath it is a parks. It's really amazing. There were great photos when they did the ribbon cutting originally of Robert Moses. In those days, they did very grand ribbon cuttings. There was no TV, and this was big entertainment, I guess. So anyway, they had it right there at the fountain, and a lot of people don't even know about that. And so they're going to renovate the entire rotunda area below. There's a parks facility there, so that's sort of our part of it essentially. And the garage, those of you who know it, and obviously the structural support, which is really the issue at hand. And so anyway, it's a DOT project, but Parks is involved, and we're working with them.
Okay, and also you go to page 13 in the book, and there's a little more details there. Anyone else want to jump in on that? No. Okay. Rita?
On page 19, you address our question on the bottom about the sidewalk on 91st Street between Central Park and Columbus. We've been complaining since 2016. People are injured every few weeks, even more than that. I myself fell on my face. I used to have a beautiful nose. But their DOT answers said city law requires property owners to maintain it, and they've addressed the owners. The owners is the city. I've talked to the school principal. She's tried to have it repaired. Students are running. There's 3-inch differences between different parts of the sidewalk.
This is PS 84?
PS 84.
So it's right in front of that. There's
Right,
some
they own it, and they
buildings
say, I called them up, and they say it's the city's problem. They've tried to get it fixed.
Okay, Eileen, do you think you could help with that as well? I don't know if that falls in your jurisdiction.
You said it's on 91st Street or 92nd?
Right, so it's the back entrance of PS 84. Okay, and, okay. Hopefully we'll get a better answer, and we'll put that up on our website. I appreciate you bringing it up. Marisa?
My name is John Waldes, and I come from West 66th Street. I want to mention that pollution impairs and kills. So increasing the pollution by slowing traffic down is an issue that we're very conscious of on 66th Street with the traffic circulation problems. How was it decided to slow the traffic down and impair and kill more people rather to try and avoid vehicular death? How was that trade-off made?
Wait, so I think there's a lot of community work. That may be I'll let Roberta and Department of Transportation take that.
Vision Zero was implemented to reduce traffic deaths, to reduce pedestrian deaths and accidents and injuries. And part of it is slowing traffic. Unfortunately, you know, it does add some pollution. We would like to see more, we are asking for congestion rules so that there will be less traffic, less vehicular traffic. You know, it's a hard one because you want to save lives. Exactly, exactly.
You know, we can actually ask the Department of Transportation to give us some information about the number of crashes at that location and see what the impact of the change has been. A lot of times when you make a change in one area, there's a unintended consequence at a different corner. Okay. Got it. So I don't remember, so maybe someone remembers from Department of Buildings, but anyway, yeah.
No, I'm just going to say, one death is one death too many. So, you know, the job is to prevent, you know, senior citizens, school children from getting hurt from speeding cars. So it's really a balance, and, you know, whether it's, you know, I don't think anyone wants to be in the hospital because they got hit by a car. It's really a safety issue that we have to balance.
You know, we just passed some idling legislation last year, sir. So we passed some legislation about cars that are idling and opportunities for citizens like yourself to identify the cars that are doing so and give that information to DEP, and they will issue a summons. I understand. I mean, slowing traffic down saves lives, and that's just full stop. But if you see someone illegally idling, DEP will take that information and issue a summons to that car. We're very lucky to have been joined by Assembly Member Dick Gottfried, and I'd like him to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen. So those of you who live between Central Park West and Columbus from the south side of 70th Street South, a small part of Helen's territory. You're also in my assembly district. I'm here to listen and learn as you are, and to thank all of you for coming with your questions, and most of all to thank Helen for pulling this event together. You know, these are, I think, really terrific opportunities for city officials to hear face-to-face from the community, and for the community to ask questions and hopefully get some answers either tonight or, as we've been hearing, maybe a little down the road, and get those answers posted. Terrific event, and it's great that, I don't know, this began, what, at 6, and it's now like 8:25, and you're all still here. It's terrific. Thank you.
We lost a copy of, make sure you get a copy of this before you go, but I need that one back. Okay, Rita. I think we're on this side.
Hi.
I see you.
I'm Betty Lind, and I notice on page 11, there's a answer about Department of Transportation is going to be looking at the flooding on, it says 71st Street, but I guess there's also going to be looking at 60th to 72nd. There's a lake on West 87th Street every time it rains. And I was wondering if there's going to be anything looked at that location. It stands there for days after any kind of precipitation. And with the summer months and the mosquitoes coming, it's a bit of a worry. I also have a question. I heard on the news that there's going to be an addendum to the budget for MTA about facilities for the disabled, getting I guess elevators and escalators, that kind of thing. And I was wondering if there's any there's going to be any push to try to get it, and any of the major, particularly, I know it can't be everywhere right now, but what about major intersections like 86th Street, 79th Street, 125th Street with that huge stairway? It's at 72nd, it's at 66th, it's at 59th.
We're with you 100%. If I could just quickly ask, 87, where's the ponding on 87th?
87th on the corner of it's the northwest corner of 87, right in front of Brooks Brothers. There's a store there, Brooks Brothers, and it's a huge puddle.
Okay, so that's
all the
on
time.
Broadway at
Broadway.
the northwest corner.
Yes.
Louis, can you
So
take that
we
back?
we could certainly, when we get through 311, we do go out, send a roadway team out to inspect the location to see if the issue is a grading problem. And if it is, we can have part of the roadway or the curb regraded so that the water can flow towards the catch basin. So then that's a DEP installs catch basins.
And I was at the last town hall meeting when this was addressed, and it's still a lake.
Okay.
It's very, if you're in a wheelchair or, trying to get across in a walker, you have to go into the street, or if you're just a regular person.
So how do we get DEP, who's here, Umberto? No, yes, to put in a catch basin there?
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you for your question. So we'll definitely look into this. We partner with DOT to make sure that the street corners have drainage. There's a drainage plan for the entire city for certain intersections. Now, to answer your question very quickly, we can install a catch basin on every street corner because of interference, where there's train stations, where there's utilities, or nor storm sewers. But I will definitely take this back, and I'll make sure that I respond to the councilwoman and provide you with an answer.
Also, I'd be really interested in seeing if there's a citywide plan on this. I was actually just going to ask somebody, but I can just ask you. If you could send that to our office, I'm very interested in seeing that. I mean, obviously, especially for District 6.
A plan in terms of what?
I thought you just said there was a citywide plan to
a drainage
address-
plan? So
Yeah.
basically what I meant by that, excuse me, so we have sewers running throughout the city, the city streets. Most of it is combined, wastewater and stormwater. We have sewers, and as I said before, we partner with DOT in terms of having them make sure that the street are graded level so it can channel the rainwater to the nearest catch basin. Unfortunately, we can't have a catch basin on every street corner. If we do, you said we don't have one here. If we do, I'll make sure it's clean. If we don't, I have to, again, make an inspection and determine why we don't have one. And
That's what
like
we're
I said,
looking for. Let's
right.
stick with that.
So again, just very quickly, the drainage plan basically entails is it channeling rainwater to the nearest catch basin? Or is it, again, it may be a catch basin from across that Right. So, okay, so we'll work together and we'll figure it out. We'll definitely provide you with a response.
I
Councilwoman.
appreciate that, because what I don't want is next year at our 6th annual town hall for you to join us. The second part of your question is incredibly important, and that was about basically elevators or some sort of accommodation for people with disabilities, physical disabilities, and accessing the subway stations. You know, this is something that I've been talking about for quite some time. We sent a letter to the MTA about this last October. And I will say, I know, Caitlin, you're going to answer this just a little bit, but if I could just preface by saying that, you know, the other day, the chair, Loda, came to speak to the council members, and we were all given an opportunity to ask questions. So one thing that's obviously happening here is in the subway action plan, they're renovating the stations. They're fixing, I understand it now, I sort of get it. So they're fixing infrastructure, you know, behind the walls that is where there are leaks and it's causing problems at the station. And with that, they're going to cover it over nicely. You know, the chairman said that when council members asked, well, don't do the decorative stuff, just get it done quickly, like don't keep it shut for that long. His answer was, well, you know, this is going to be the last time in 50 years that we're down there, so might as well do this. My response to that was, wait, hang on. We're being told that there's going to be an analysis of where elevators should be. And if you're telling me now that at this location you've already decided that there aren't going to be elevators, I have a problem with that, because I know that location, and I would want to see the engineering plans that show that there couldn't be an elevator at 110th and at 86th in particular on Central Park West. So I know that the new president of the MTA, or whatever section, you'll tell me, Andy Byford, who seems terrific, announced something.
Right, you touched on it. There are two different things happening. So a few weeks back, New York City Transit President Andy Byford,
thank you,
he announced a system-wide study to conduct and catalog and analyze what would be needed to make the system fully accessible. That's going to be a lot of zeros. And that would go into the next, that would help inform what capital projects are put into our next plan. So we do 5-year capital rebuilding plans. We're currently in the 2015 to 2019 plan. So this study will inform what goes into the 2020 to 2025 plan. But what your constituent mentioned happened yesterday. Yesterday, our board of directors voted to pass an amendment to our existing capital plan. It's some $300 million of additional investment. $200 million of that will be used for accessibility enhancements like elevators, and $100 million will be to improve station circulation enhancements like what we call progressive accessibility, redesigning the staircases, making the handrails ADA compliant, making sure the first and last riser are of a contrasting color for people with low vision. And there's a lot that we can do on that progressive accessibility that doesn't come with quite so many zeros.
So can I just ask? So starting, I have this information, I think it's in here. Starting, I think it's July 1st, you're going to start your work at West 86th Street. I believe you've already, oh, here it is. You've already begun work. April 9th, you began work at 110th Street. And June 4th, you're going to begin work at 86th Street. There's no question in my mind that we could put some sort of elevator at both of those locations. And I want you to know that I am deeply disappointed and won't stop talking about the fact that you're not using this opportunity to put the elevators in now. people from Transit Center, the experts from the Transit Center even know specifications about the elevators that could fit in those locations. And it's not acceptable to say we're doing a plan when you're also having the opportunity right now. I mean, a lot of zeros, first of all, you know, who cares? We're talking about citizens in, or residents of the city. And second of all, it's going to be many more zeros if we wait until that plan comes out. If we do it now, and I know you have firms under contract now to add elevators on the L line, there's really no excuse for not doing it here. Thank you, but it's really just so offensive.
I hear what you're saying. The stations at 72nd Street and 86th Street are part of what we're calling the Enhanced Station Initiative. It is a new type of program for us, and one of the tenets of that program is to close the station for a very minimal amount of time. And the work that we're doing now does not preclude future work at that station. But this Enhanced Station Initiative is to fix critical repairs that need to be done now.
Right. I don't think you heard me. I mean, I get that, okay? And I appreciate you, and I appreciate the position you're in. This first time you're on the Upper West Side. Welcome. And what I would ask is, that, you know, please, I'm sorry, but please take back to Mr. Byford that he's wasting an opportunity, and this community is outraged. I mean, he knows that. He was here at the town hall the other night. But it's just a waste of good government resources. You're opening it up now. There's just no common sense answer. And I have asked repeatedly for tours at that location with an engineer to show me why they can't put in an elevator. The time is ticking. And, you know, I've not been extended the courtesy of that tour, despite the fact that Chairman Loda promised it to me at the meeting we had with him 2 months ago. So this is not appreciated.
Right, we need to follow up on that with you immediately.
Thank you. Sorry, let's move on. Marisa, is it your side?
Oh, okay. I have some information to give to sanitation. We're not getting a response about the rats on our block. So I'll just hand that out. My other question was to the police department. Are regular bikes that ride in the wrong direction something that we can report and businesses get into trouble?
Yes. Okay. Now, reporting just the logistics of it, just really, really quick, is you report if you call 911 for a bike riding on the other side of the road, you know, not in the opposite direction or on the sidewalk. Logistically, the police car isn't going to make it there in time. However, they're not going to make it there in time. The bike's going to be gone by the time they get there. We got to be real about that. However, even by making that call or by calling 311, we see it. When you do that, it informs our operations. We always do bicycle on the sidewalk and bicycle enforcement. That's year-round. So
pizza is notorious.
Yeah.
Yes, as far as again, my partner Captain Manuel has done a lot of work. As far as bicycle on the enforcement, unless I get corrected, right now there's not legislation that I'm aware of for the actual bicycle. However, bicycle on the sidewalk is something. No, I'm sorry. To hold the business accountable, there is definitely vehicle traffic regulations as far as bicycle on the sidewalk that we do go out there and enforce. And Captain Manuel has done has done a lot of work to spearhead our bicycle enforcement here in the 24th precinct. And I believe in your booklet that was given out by Councilmember Rosenthal is the results of of our bicycle enforcement. But on the topic of bicycles, I just wanted to expand a little bit further. Bicycle on the sidewalk, especially in the community Upper West Side, we do have a significant older population that can't be ignored. I would encourage you immediately to call 911 to get us the quick response over to that location. And also to take it a step further from just the one person on the bicycle, the delivery person. We have groups. This happens every summer. We had our first instance that I'm aware of this year, about 2 weeks ago, where we have groups of kids from other parts of the city that meet up. And they come in about like 200, bicycles, groups of about like 200 going the wrong way, going on the sidewalk. Unfortunately, there's always one or two bad apples in every bunch. They actually might steal apples or oranges from a food vendor or something of the sort. Definitely call 911. And even on a patrol borough level, we're actually taking police complaint reports. Also investigating in conjunction with our NCOs, because a number of times these are the same individuals. So we have our neighborhood coordination officers that have the detective training. We can go back. We can look at the video. Who is this individual that's on their bike on the sidewalk? And again, there is a crime, reckless endangerment. We do work hand in hand with the district attorney's office, especially when it comes to elder safety and situations that have been proven in the past to lead to more serious issues. But yes, we are out there. We are working to hold them accountable. And any instance of a bike on the sidewalk, please reach out to us, 911.
Okay.
Of course.
And there are a lot of
course.
people I see still with their hands up, and I see you gentlemen. We'll get to you, and Rita.
Thank you.
Sure, everyone has.
My name is Dr. Carol Goldberg, and I know you're here because many of you work for law enforcement, and the rest of us are community residents who care about law enforcement. So I think it should be known, and people should be outraged, that the Department of Buildings is allowing 200 Amsterdam Avenue to continue its construction while they, since March, have said that a permit was inappropriately, illegally issued in terms of gerrymandering, and yet they continue to be allowed to continue to build. We have asked for an injunction. If you're looking into things, why not wait instead of allowing them to put the whole building up? And I am not against construction and development of the community. I am against that building because it's too big and it's not just the final product, but it's also in terms of the construction we have to listen to. The higher the building, the more construction noise, and it's next to a school. And high cranes injure or at least risk children's lives, besides which I don't know how children can learn. Many of you are educators or parents. How can children learn with that horrible noise level? It impacts everything. The construction workers come to work not in limos, but on the 72nd Street subway, and that subway is a death trap. I have been there with those narrow staircases and narrow platforms. I've been there in smoke conditions, and you really can't escape. So it impacts the whole community, every one of you, even if you don't have the view that I have of it. Thank you.
Byron, you want to take a stab at that? I think it was about the tall building that's going up at 200 Amsterdam. And Roberta, do you want to talk about a construction committee a little bit? Maybe Roberta will start.
We have been in, Penny Ryan, who's the district manager, who couldn't be here tonight, and I have been in constant communication with the developer of 200 Amsterdam about the ongoing work that they're doing. And they have been very responsive to the school, which is good. And at some point, if a building will be built, we don't know what building it will be, but there will be a building there. There will be a construction oversight committee, which will include representatives from Councilmember Rosenthal's office, as well as people from the community. The developer has been very responsive on the kinds of issues that the community board has had. We're not talking about whether we like the building or not. That's a whole different issue. But
So this is the kind of stuff that's really helpful to know. The best thing you can do is immediately call 311, and it will get routed to the right people to write tickets. So you're right, and so now what we need to do is get the information to the officers.
if you can get the information to,
I think it's actually, who would write, it's a traffic officer, right? Right, so the 2-0, Captain Mallon, is the guy who's going to keep a lookout for that. Yeah, let's
And-
keep moving.
And
Oh.
if, in terms of construction, we can certainly also send an inspector to see if they are abiding by DOT construction permits. And we have, we can issue some summonses, certainly not anything related to traffic itself, but the work zone summons.
So the
Well,
So there was.
I can't speak for the DOB permit. I can only.
So, and also, Louis, if you could just take a note of that at 200 Amsterdam, if you could send some people around. Byron?
So this property at 200 Amsterdam has been audited at the highest levels at the department, including technical affairs. It was, yes, a very interesting presentation in terms of the merging of the lots and the shape of the lot that provided for the legality of this building. Before, there has been some talk about loopholes. It's rather interpretations of the zoning regulation. And based on those interpretations, this development has been allowed to proceed. It has been audited on several occasions. We can continue the conversation with within the Department of Buildings about the concerns of the community, including any unsafe practices that may be occurring. We could have inspections when needed.
I think
yes.
exactly what we would ask you to do, please, is to work with us so that the BSA, where the challenge is right now, understands DOB's final assessment of your final interpretation of the plans there. If we feel that DOB could play a really big role in the BSA in our challenge. So can we follow up on that?
Like I said, we will continue the conversation with your office and with the constituents who are concerned about this one development. And the BSA is obviously the next step.
Byron, just so you know, you don't worry. We're working with some other people in your agency about this. You might not be as familiar. I mean, this one building has been, the cause célèbre for thousands of residents on the Upper West Side. So it's a big deal to us. So to be continued. I think we talked about it a little earlier.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Marin. I live on West 81st Street on Broadway, and I'd like to start by saying thank you very much to Helen and to Sean and to Marissa for enacting legislation last year that addressed a very serious issue with which I was involved, having to do with the city's registration of a fraudulent deed to my home, whereby they deprived me of my home, my property rights, and continued to charge me taxes while doing that, real property taxes. I would like to address the Department of Finance now to ask why I cannot have those taxes that were charged to me while the city deprived me of my property for my property now returned to me.
That's a great question. Sheila, do you know about that property and that exact story?
I'm somewhat familiar with this case, but I think what I'd rather do is talk to you offline about it because it's okay. My understanding, and this is complicated when we're dealing with cases of deed fraud, and I'm sorry that happened. What's very complicated about deed fraud is that people unknowingly, but yet lawfully, are signing away the rights to their home. Maybe not in this case, but I'm just saying that in general, that's what's very hard about deed fraud. Because we've been, as an agency, as you know, we have the Sheriff's Office as part of New York City Department of Finance. And the sheriff has looked at many, many deed fraud cases. But the crux of the hard part of this is that people do, there's a lot of scammers. There's a lot of groups that work together that include lawyers. We've spent a lot of time looking at this issue because the commissioner is very focused and dedicated on this issue. There are lawyers that are part of this. There are notaries that are part of it. The issue here is that we actually didn't give the property away. But as I said, I am familiar with it. Taxes are taxes. I'm sorry that I have to be the bad guy here, or a lady in this case. It's like, it's the law, and I'm sorry about that.
I'm going to turn it over here, Rita. Rita, I think the woman right in front of, Ellen, do you mind 1 second? I think the woman right in front had a question. She's had her hand up for a long time. In the green shirt, did you have a question? Okay. I'm sorry, Ellen. You'll come round. You know I love you.
My name is Jennifer Thomas, and I live at 92nd Street. And I want to address New York City housing. One, on people with mental illness. We have an overcrowdedness, and everybody seems to turn their head and seeing what's going on in this country with mental illness. We need NYPD, who has been very supportive, because I've seen an incident where the family called and the person was hauled out in handcuffs, not being aware that they're mentally ill. Two, the attitude of Wise Towers sucks. They have a nasty attitude towards tenants. This young man who is mentally ill, yes, went to ask for a breakdown because his parents wasn't there and the attitude wasn't good at all.
Okay.
This could escalate into something that we have been seeing going around in the country. They're also asking parents to be responsible for their children. And when you ask for help, we don't get any help.
Okay.
So something needs to be done, to be addressed, especially with mental illness in this country. This is a serious case, and we are seeing the escalation and where it has gone to. We don't want this to be in New York City. So we need to ask whoever responsible, whether it's Department of Health and Hygiene, to educate people, to be more sensitive to these people, these folks. I'm talking on behalf of these people who cannot talk for themselves. And it's something that I am very, very sensitive with, because it's in my backyard as well.
I appreciate your question, I really do. You seem to be addressing a number of things.
Yes. And the overcrowdedness with parents, with these young people that we are not getting no help with, especially if you're living in New York City housing. It's very, 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 very unalarming. I want to thank the officers and them, whoever comes out. Sometimes they have patience, not all of them, but I still want to thank you for the job that they have been doing to work with parents. Please don't tie our hands behind our back. Whether it's at DOE, whether it's a college, city college, we need help. Because they are sending these young people who have no idea how to deal with these unscrupulous attitude of these city workers. I work in the city, I work with DOE as well. And I treat people the way I want to, they expect to be treated and their children.
I think
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question and bringing up a variety of issues. Brian, I know a couple of these cases are very sensitive and tricky, but of course everyone needs to be treated with respect. I don't know if you want to address this now or talk with the resident separately.
So I will be happy to talk with you separately. I've been to the management office at Wise. I know, and we actually have talked about customer service there. I think things have improved a little bit, but things could always get better. We have a new office, though, at NYCHA, a department that deals with health issues, actually that partners with the Department of Health. This is an issue that is not only unique to Wise, but throughout our whole portfolio. So it's something that I will talk about tomorrow, not only with the manager of Wise, but also with Andrea Mata, who runs that department at NYCHA. It's something that maybe we can come up with something to address around awareness for people who work in our management offices. So I'll be glad to talk to you afterwards too, and give you my information as well.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name's Pauline Ferranti. I'm from the New York City Department of Health. Sorry for my voice. But as part of the First Lady, Shirley McCrae's Thrive NYC program, the health department has been working with the NYPD and other agencies on co-response and also training. But we do recommend that people call NYC Well. It is a free, anonymous, 24/7. You can call, text, or chat and get linked up with mental health support. So we recommend everybody in New York City use that service. It is free and it is anonymous. And we also do provide mental first aid training for anyone who is interested. If you engage with the public or if you're interested in gaining tools on how to interact with people who may be suffering from mental illness, on how not to escalate a situation and how to get them and gear them towards help, that is something that we're offering, and we want to train as many people in New York City as possible. So if the council member or the community board is willing to bring at least 20 people in the community to come, we can bring a trainer out into the community if that's something that we want to work together on. If not, there is always trainings available at our Long Island City office. So if you go onto our website and look for mental health first aid training, it is an 8-hour training and you get certified in mental health first aid. So we recommend everybody take that training. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. We'll definitely follow up with you. We have just about 10 more minutes, so let's have a couple of quick questions.
Yeah, it will just be a quick question. I want to ask one question here. I could ask a whole bunch of people, but let's start with the DOT and the MTA, both at the same time. Listen to what I got to say carefully. West End Avenue has become an expressway. Last weekend, a cab was hit broadside, making a turn at 61st Street in West End. It turned over 3 times with people in it. This is not stopping. My alternative plan is this: there's no more construction on West End. Let's alleviate some of the traffic, listen to what I got to say, and make a bus lane. Okay? That bus lane will alleviate a lot of the traffic, the cars coming back this way. In other words, buses are not going to stop the flow of traffic. The other question is this with the DOT. I'm sorry to say, I live over 61st between West End and Freedom Place. Do you see the buildings that are going on there? The other problem is this. They put streets in my neighborhood that don't belong to the city. They're not designated city streets, so there's no signage. There's not. But you ready? Everybody who puts a building up, put their signage. I have a building that says, I live in a building with seniors. You got to see this sign. Oh, privilege. Really? There's no such thing as privilege. It's not an official city street. It's free parking.
You know what? I really appreciate your question because many residents have called in about that issue, and also with not being able to get their mail because it's not a dedicated street yet. And there is a process from having it go from a private street when they're doing construction to the public street. But I don't know, Louis, do you know about this particular?
On private streets, when we do get complaints, we talk to the owner, the property owners, about complaints like that, and we work with them in terms of what types of signs they should be installing until DOT takes possession of the street, and then we come in and install our own signs. So certainly we
Louis,
do get complaints about
let's
that.
follow up on these exact streets.
In the past, Riverside Boulevard and Freedom Place between 66th and 70th, the developer, the Riverside South Corporation, was very, very helpful in getting signage up. So we do have stop signs and other signs. We have had a tremendous problem with Riverside Center South, and we still do not, and I think, Eileen, you will appreciate this, we still do not have school crossing signs in front of PS 191. And I know that Commissioner Sanchez has discussed this with them, but they have not put up proper signage. So anything we can do to get the developer to put up signage will be a big help.
Okay, thank you. Ellen, I'm sorry I cut you off before.
So nice to
feel welcome, and somebody who knows you. Okay, it may sound like a trivial question, but for me it isn't, and I don't know whether it's the DEP or Department of Health who can answer this. We talked about the responsibility of pet owners to pick up dog poop, dog feces. Dogs are supposed to be curbed. Is it a health or environmental problem, or is there a regulation regarding urine, where dogs will urinate on the tree areas, on the sidewalk? We have stone planters in front of my building, and they love to use them. I don't know whether, is it
Great
a health
question.
hazard?
I want to move it along just because we're running out of time, but it's a great question.
Sanitation actually issues summonses for, like I mentioned it earlier, unleashed dog has to be on a leash of under 6 feet, 6 or less feet, for failure to pick up and for peeing on, urinating on public property or on like your neighbor's property or something like that. Technically, yes, they are supposed to pee, in the street. I think no matter where a dog pees, it's going to probably create
Well,
some
hang
sort
on
of
one
hazard.
second. Carolyn, do you want to give
But-
sort
but
of a
that's our,
public health response to
regulation.
that question?
I mean, it's not something that we regulate. It's not something that the health department regulates. And in terms of health hazard, it's not even something that is on our radar for.
I think it's
I think
more
that's
of a-
important to know.
We do
That's
issue
an
for
important
that,
answer.
yes.
Okay, Marisa, next question.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yes, this is a noise issue for the DEP. I have a long-standing noise problem from an air conditioner in a neighboring building. I've called the DEP several times to, for complaints, to request. I've had inspectors over a number of times. They've found a violation. However, they have told me that they do not want to get involved in neighbor-to-neighbor situations. And my question is, why does the DEP not want to take enforcement action in a neighbor-to-neighbor situation?
Hello?
Humberto?
Is this on? Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So basically, we regulate, New York Noise Codes regulates equipment, noise. For instance, AC, HVAC. If you're speaking particularly about neighbor to neighbor in terms of, like, let's say your neighbor has a loud, watches TV very loudly or plays music, that's different. It's not an equipment that we regulate in terms of noise enforcement. It's not part of the noise codes. If it is very loud, I always suggest, in terms of noise, TV or music, I always suggest the tenant to speak to the building management, at least to notify the building management or landlord of this issue. Whether it's resolved or not, at least you made your point. You directed the issue to the landlord or the building management. Second, you can always call 311. Our sister agency or police department has a lot on their hands, but they can respond. Now, I think I can respond for them a little bit. It's difficult for neighbor to neighbor, and I'll finish with this, only because your neighbor may not allow us to enter their property, their apartment, okay?
Yeah, I'd like to answer that on behalf of NYPD. Yeah, when it comes to neighbor, I'm not sure. You guys are getting neighborhood coordination officers in the 20th precinct in July?
Correct.
I believe. That is a perfect example of collaboration that you can reach out to the NCOs, that they'll come over, and if it is the neighborhood, if it is a neighbor-to-neighbor dispute in the same building, and those are more than often citywide. Some of the quality of life complaints that we get the most of, and the 24th precinct is no exception. That we do get a number of neighbor moving furniture, neighbor playing the music. And again, we do have enforcement options, such as going over. If you invite us into your apartment, we can go inside and we can assess the noise. But also, we can even take it a step further. Sometimes the landlord, and I don't want to speak for any building in particular. This is, again, experiences that I've encountered in my police career. Sometimes at 3 in the morning, the super might not be on site, or the landlord might not be on site. We can't get in touch with them. It might be a little bit difficult to mediate the situation. And in one of my previous assignments with neighborhood coordination officers up in Central Harlem, we had great success with a mediation. The New York Peace Institute. We can actually come in with the neighborhood coordination officers if the parties agree to do so. We could sit down and maybe mediate the situation, that it's not any sort of animosity that, you know, you called the police on me and now I have a summons, and so forth. As far as noise complaints for, you know, again, I think what was being touched on before was the NYPD with the forceful entry into apartments solely for the basis of loud noise. We still have an obligation to address that concern. Commissioner O'Neill has said in other forums, you know, and even addressed towards precinct commanders, that we would be out of a job if we did not address the precinct, if we did not address the quality of life concerns. There are always, we still go over, and again, consent into the apartment is the best policy. And again, this also goes back to the communication, neighborhood policing model. You know, it's just a lot of times it's just knocking on a door, a simple conversation to get in. I don't think it's as much of an issue that I've encountered here on the Upper West Side. But again, there are other reasons that we might still go into the apartment, such as overcrowding, dangerous conditions, which might have to do with overcrowding with teen parties and so forth. But as far as the neighbor-to-neighbor noise complaint, definitely reach out to us, both the 20th and the 24th precinct, and we'll definitely address that concern the best way possible.
You know, Captain, that was such a great answer. I didn't know about that. If there's some way of writing that up, so we'll add it to our book about the peace officers and negotiating an issue, I really appreciate your answer. Unfortunately, we only have time for one more question. Rita, I'm putting it over here. Oh, I'm really sorry. I'm going to stay here. These guys will stay here for a little bit longer. We just have a hard stop at JCC. We can also write down your question. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I think it's in the back. Just real quickly.
Okay, my question is for the HPD representative, and it's about people who are disabled who qualify for succession rights in Mitchell-Lama housing. It has 4 short parts. One is, what is the criteria?
You know what? I love this question.
I know. I've submitted it repeated times, but
love
I've
it.
never gotten an answer. Here's my chance.
Here's your
Please.
chance. So here's what we're going to do. Rita has your question. Do you have the question, Rita?
No, Ned had it.
Ned has it.
Ned
Okay.
had it for the
We are going to get the
thing. It
answer to
mattered.
that question. It's so important. We will have it on the website. No, really, I promise. It's just there are many other people with their hands up, and I want to give you all an opportunity to give your questions to somebody with a clipboard or to if the representatives will stay a few minutes more. And again, could we please just thank the representatives who are doing this on their own personal time. Hang on, I really.
Do you want me to take some paper, or do you have another clip?